people are just very prone to sort of buddy up or soldier up with people that share their mindset or their worldview. And people are also, we all have egos and we all believe that our experience and our perspective is important. And I think that's true as well. But when you cling too tightly to that identity or that individual perspective, it's dangerous and it's also limiting.
Welcome to Creative Leadership with Heart, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of creative leadership. I'm your host, Rigo Nasol. Join me as we explore the impact of heart-centered leadership in today's creative and design organizations.
Sweet.
Right on. Thanks, guys, for joining us back again for an episode of Creative Leadership with Heart. We've been talking about this one for a couple months now. I have Clement here. He's the head of creative labs at Netflix. Well, really good friend of mine. Known him for past over a decade now.
Yeah.
And his goal there is to revolutionize the way promotional content is created and discovered around the globe. So that's a pretty big, lofty job you got there, Reed. So just to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as a creative? Like, what about creative drew you in?
Yeah, it's awesome to see you. And like you said at the top, we've known each other for a decade plus, so it's cool to like shoot things around with you a little bit. So yeah, I mean, like I've always loved to make stuff, and I don't think I really knew what that meant when I was young. And so like, you know, creativity is, I think, something that's part of everybody. It's everybody's got like a creative streak. Everybody can make stuff. Everybody can do something with their mind and their hands. And so I was really drawn to entertainment because I was a kid of the 90s and late 80s and loved movies and was like, that's it. I got to make movies. I'm going to do that. And me and my friends at the time would make those things happen, and they were embarrassing and fun. But I think what drew me to it was like, you're getting together and sharing ideas, and then something comes out of it. It's like this alchemy, which is so cool. So yeah, I mean, I just continued down that journey, down that road, and was so fortunate to find myself in many cool companies and scenarios and opportunities. And, you know, long story short, it led me to Netflix, actually working with you initially. And so like that, you know, what you read off at the top, that the beauty or that of the thing that we get to do, like the journey to revolutionize stuff. That's what drives me, is just this idea that like creativity can be thought-provoking and disruptive and exciting. And honestly, it's like a way to come pull people together. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, you were at BPG too for a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was VPG, kind of in their production division, which was called, I don't know what it's called now. Like it's been so long, but it was Rebel Films, which is funny because like we're rebels. And yeah, we would like produce promos and spots in house, and man, it was a gauntlet, but it was fun. I learned a lot. Before that, it was just run and gun. Like, okay, my freelance assistant directing job ended. I got to find a new one. And hopefully the PA that I met on the last one has a connection to another set, you know, and then that's sort of that like freelance production world. So at the time, you know, I was very grateful to be in a spot where it's like, oh, it's more consistent. But yeah, it's been a lot of production, and then it's led to like product development and promotional creative, which is a funny what's the word, manifestation of those early days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna get into next, is when you were as a kid, you know, like I did the same, making little short movies with my friends on like a camcorder, and I just had 2 VCRs to edit. Like I didn't have anything, and it was the worst, but I still did it. Um, did you imagine like where you are now, right? Because as kids, we were like, oh, let's make movies, right? Let's make short films or like do stuff like that. But the roles that we had were like completely changing the way people experience creative. So what were your thoughts as you were in it, as seeing like, oh, I went into this to kind of make movies and make trailers and make stuff like that. Now you're like at a tech company that's looking at things a totally different way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you had 2 VCRs, baller, like tape to tape. We were like editing our short films in the handy cam. Like you'd rewind it and then back to the port where you wanted to cut and then just start your new recording. Anyway, the fact that any of us had handy cams was like, well, how fortunate were we?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like when I was in it, it was hard because I think as a younger person, I was so fixated on, well, this is the thing I must do. This is the idea. These are the expectations I've set for myself. Somebody once said to me, expectations are just premeditated disappointments. So like, um, when I was in it and I was like, oh, this is not how I thought the journey was going. It was very easy to get frustrated and um, disappointed with myself, I guess, because I was like, well, I had this plan, I had this thing, and then there was a moment where somewhere in the journey, I just kind of opened myself up to potential and opportunity in a way that was like, I need to abandon the expectation that I had because it was just an idea. It wasn't actually reality. And once I did that, it led to so many cool things. And like, yeah, when I was making dorky little short films in middle school or high school or even in college, did I ever imagine I'd be doing what I'm doing today? Absolutely not. But I am really glad that I was able to like grow and, I don't know, just evolve expectation setting for myself and then people around me, because then it opens you up to more potential. So, yeah, man, it's been a weird journey, but I'm super grateful for it. It has allowed me to do a lot of the stuff that I did imagine and dream about when I was a kid, just in like wildly different contexts. And I'm sure anybody you ask would say that. It's like, um, I bet Steven Spielberg, for all of his successes, would probably say, like, yeah, what I dreamt up when I was doing 8mm home videos was not what I thought I'd be getting into when I was making, Jurassic Park. Um, Not that he and I are the same, but yeah, it's very different, but it's been a really cool journey.
Yeah, that's crazy because I don't think anyone went into it, but I think that's a great lesson for people to maybe hear again is the opening yourself up to the opportunity, right? The possibility.
Yeah.
Because when we set these expectations in our mind, I love that quote. Like we set these expectations in our mind, we're almost setting ourselves up to fail. But if we don't attach ourselves to the outcome and we enjoy the experience and we're present in the journey, we have so much more opportunity that gets opened up for us.
Yeah,
Um,
that's so true. It's so true. And I'll just say, Nadine Becker, if you're watching this, I like to attribute people, so that's your quote. Thanks for letting me share it.
yeah, great. Thanks for calling them out, and hopefully they are. Um, so we talked about how kind of the experience, like what you expected as a kid, isn't where you ended up, but you opened yourself up to that. But so, how was your approach to creative change since then? Like, how have you grown?
Mm.
Like, your approach to creativity, innovation, technology, even.
Yeah, big question. I'll take it from like, my approach to creativity, like, let's say 15 years ago versus now. Before it was very like subjective and centered on like perspective, like my perspective, my view, myself. Um, and over time, I realized that nobody can achieve anything with that mindset. And so I think the biggest shift for me has been um, being curious about the multiple disciplines. So here's one example that's been super cool about working at a place like Netflix. The biggest like shock or shift for me was like going from a film set or an editing bay, and then being in a computer bay setting with a bunch of product engineers or folks that are working on like developing algos and trying to understand how they think and how that relates to some of the work that I might be doing that I've been asked to do, in the context of a company like Netflix. And boy, was that humbling, because it was like all that expertise I thought I had was still valuable, but it had to shift in order for it to make sense to them. And I had to open myself up to their perspective in order for what I was doing to make sense to the whole, like the greater thing. And so I think like the biggest shift for me was just like, wow, there's so many professions and so many people doing creative work that, at face value is not maybe categorized as a creative thing or categorized or put together with creativity, but there's such creativity in so many different things. And so working at a place like this, in a culture like this, where you can I don't know, just like buddy up with those folks and do something and ask like, how would we? Like that question, like how would we do that? Leads to like a really cool thing, which again, like to get to your question, um, how is it different? Is like, oh, how do we make something that actually makes people uncomfortable? Like, how do we make something that's like breaking their brains a little bit? That's a Don Chinette quote. Breaking their brains to make them think, oh, I had no idea we could do that. I had no idea that we could actually the work could look this way, or the technology could make the work come out this way. Um, so yeah, man, I think long way to answer your question. I think like just me being much more aware of how wide the funnel of creativity is, and it's not just like people that are excellent artists or people that are incredible writers. It's so much more. And when you think about it in those ways, it's almost overwhelming. But yeah, it's been exciting to learn that. Like it's been a lot of learning.
Yeah, people forget that there's like technical aspects to it all,
Mhm.
right? Yes, creativity, there's room for artistry, yes, but there's also room like nowadays there's an implementation ask that needs to happen, right? And so because you know Illustrator, After Effects, and Photoshop doesn't mean you know how to make it show up on the Netflix platform,
Yeah.
right? Or things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and there was this notion I want to get into that we talked about. This is what actually sparked me wanting to have you on here was this idea and this notion of self, losing self, and the ego, the part that ego plays in your approach to creativity now. So I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah. Um, this is something I think about probably more than I should, just for the sake of like my like mental and emotional well-being, because it gets me fired up. But yeah, I think like I think I talked to my friends and my wife a lot about this idea of community, and I've learned a lot about that over time. I think also like the idea of self and the idea of ego is also tied up with how we live, right? Like how we grew up, who we're surrounded by, our culture. I think in the United States, in particular, in some other Western countries, but like in the U.S. in particular, I'll just speak from there since I'm a U.S. citizen and I grew up here. Like it's very individual focused. Like when you go pick up your kids or go to the grocery store, count how many bumper stickers you see that are like an identity of self. Like it's this is who I am. And like you don't see that in a lot of other places. And I think it comes from this idea that like we are all an island. We are all one. Or if we're not all an island and we're all one, we want to surround ourselves with people that are like this. And that I think is dangerous. And I so I'll get to like how this relates like bumper stickers to creativity. But I think like you people are just very prone to sort of buddy up or soldier up with people that share their mindset or their worldview. And people are also, we all have egos and we all believe that our experience and our perspective is important. And I think that's true as well. But when you cling too tightly to that identity or that individual perspective, it's dangerous and it's also limiting. And I think like so like as it relates to creative teams, um, we use this term at Netflix, and I know a lot of other businesses do is too. Is like there's too many silos. Like a silo being an isolated vacuum. Um, and I think that thought, that sort of presence of ego, that importance or emphasis on individualism, is what leads to silos because you're just so focused on what you can control being an important word, that you forget to realize that your idea is great, but if somebody were fertilizing it or somebody were watering it or somebody had put it in a different sort of setting or environment, that idea is going to become their idea too, and it'll be better for it. And so I've related this idea of like, I mean, honestly too, our world is so like um focused on like divisiveness right now. And I think like it's such a time to be like, all right, where can you bring people together and be community focused? And in creativity, it just leads to so much richer work and such deeper understanding of the goal, like the challenge. And so ego is important. Again, like, I think, like, everybody has it, and that's the seed of a great idea, is somebody's individual perspective. But from that moment on, it's kinda gotta be like, "This is not my idea." I have a friend who's a musician, and he was, like, talking about this notion of genius, and, like, genius is not, it does not belong to you. Like, it's not, no one is a genius. It's just there's people that are really good at spotting the ideas that come to them and through them and honoring them and knowing what to do with them at the right time. Like, that is genius. It's not like I've developed this and pulled it out of myself. It's like, no, you're just super aware, and also you're very intelligent, and you knew what to do with it. So it's like, anyway, I think, like, it's just such a powerful thing for creative teams to be thinking as though they are an organism, as opposed, like, a shared ecosystem, as opposed to individuals. And in my experience, like, man, the work is so much better for it. And that's, like, back to the thing you asked me before, that's where you get these really beautiful projects where you've got, like, MIT engineers sitting with trailer editors, sitting with copywriters that worked at journalism, and they're all just kind of like, "Oh, God, you're a really cool person, and, like, your life experience is amazing, and, oh, also, you made my idea better." you know? So, yeah, anyway, that's my soapbox on it. I think it's, once you think of it in that way, it opens you up again to so much opportunity, so much potential.
Yeah, I mean, leadership. I mean, that's basic leadership. Almost what you were describing, right? Is leadership is about making everyone around you better and being egoless, right? And this is something that I have to work on with, like, even just coaching clients, people, because they're like, "Oh, I want the recognition. I want this. I want this." Well, what does that mean to you? Oh, that means people recognize that I'm good. And what does that mean to you?
Mhm.
That means people accept me. Well, why is that important? Because maybe because you don't accept yourself, or is there some bucket you're trying to fill by taking all the credit, right? And
Yeah.
so once we let go of that desire to need to feel like it was mine, or like get the credit, or like be stroked, be like, "Oh, that was such a good job," right? Once we can let go of that, that's when true greatness happens, right? That's when, like
Yeah.
you said, beauty can happen, because, like, it's like a machine, and when all things are working together, it's a symphony. But when one cog's like, "No, that's my cog," it takes it out, then it just, like, messes it all up.
Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, I mean, like, look, I think everybody wants to be recognized. Anybody I work with will be like, "Yeah, right, like, Reed wants the credit." But I think, like, but I do think, like, there's such an importance on not being obsessed with that credit, like, being an orchestrator as a leader. Like, it's so the credit is in seeing people succeed, I think, like watching, it's almost like being, you're a dad, like watching your kids succeed. They're not like, "I did it because of you," when they're toddlers, or, like, when they're, like, in my case, my son's in high school now. They're not, generally speaking, doing that, but that's like, you had a role in that. Like, when people were like, "Oh, your kids are so polite," you can take some credit for that, but you don't have to be like, "Well, it's because I yell at them all the time." It's like, "Yeah, thank you for saying that. They're wonderful people." And, like, it's really for them, not for you. So,
Right. That's a great, way to position it, a great analogy, right? Like, it don't it the kid thing is perfect. Like, I mean, it resonates great for me. For someone who doesn't
yeah,
have kids, like, just kind of imagine someone around you, even maybe someone you're mentoring. You don't take credit for someone you're mentoring, right?
totally.
If somebody you're mentoring gets a job promotion, you don't go like, "Oh, I got them that job promotion," or like whatever, right? You're a proud mentee or mentor that you're like, "Yeah, it's someone I worked with. They did it themselves and they got the job or got the promotion." So,
Yeah.
um,
You imagine, like, like, on LinkedIn, when people are like, "Oh my god, I got this new job," and, like, the first comment is like, "'Cause of me."
yeah. Oh man. Uh, yeah, that would it may probably be more honest.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, yeah, if only we could all be so honest.
Um, okay, cool. I want to also get into some other things that we were talking about, because I think it'd be important for people to hear. Um, because you've heard me, you know me, I'm a staunch believe, like, I wouldn't say staunch, but I'm a pretty big AI optimist,
Mm,
because I think AI can unlock so much for us that can make us focus on the human connection, the things that humans can do that AI can't do yet, right? I have yet to experience AI that can really create a human connection, that can tell a story really well with emotions and all those things. So, what are your thoughts of how AI can hurt or help the creative industry or just the industry in general?
Yeah. Everybody loves AI. Um, I think like I'll start with hurt because like we just in LA or not sorry not just LA but like in entertainment in the US we just wound down on a couple of major strikes which AI was at the crux of a lot of those disagreements and ultimately protections for how AI is used was at the center of a lot of that. um and I think like the concerns and and the danger and what's damaging is just recklessness. I think um it is a tool. It is um, a method to get an idea out, and I think like that applies to a lot of different tools, like printing press. Like that was just a way to manufacture ideas, like to put them in writing, and people were terrified about it because it was like, oh shit, now people are going to learn how to read and then like have opinions and like fight back. um, and with AI, I think like unchecked, like a lot like companies, like the figureheads at companies or companies using AI recklessly or team people not talking to one another again, like back to that like individual decisions and like ego driving the way. Like that will lead to some really damaging things and I think it's super important to acknowledge the fear that a lot of people have with this technology like changing their livelihoods, like especially when people are thinking about likeness, like if you're an actor and your voice is replicated or your face and your features are replicated. It's also terrifying from like in like a geopolitical
Hmm.
perspective, right? Like you've seen like deep fakes and things like that or videos that are replicating politicians and like my god, like terrifying. So I think like there are sweeping dangerous things that could happen, and I won't get too deep into like more of those, but like on the flip side, if you like really think of it as a tool, it's super powerful and super exciting. As somebody that works with a lot of like high touch, a lot of teams that work with high touch, high labor, long sort of timeline creative work, they are so excited by a lot of the potential and the features. Like there's a company named Runway ML that's doing a lot of awesome stuff with video and motion graphics. Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, obviously all these companies that are doing artwork and video features. And what it's doing in a really cool way is it's like accelerating thought to thought to tangible outcome. Like creatives that have these amazing thoughts, and also have the hard skills and years of training are finding it exciting because they're able to say in like 5 minutes, oh, like my prompts and my mindset have just been like accelerated out. And I'm very quick to like illustrate and decide. And then from there, build. And that's really cool. And then like another interesting thing, which I think is controversial. And I think some people I see both sides of this argument, but I think AI also has the opportunity to like democratize creativity in a way that um, maybe hasn't been really fully realized. And what I mean by that is like a lot of people don't have access to arts education or technical education that supports the arts. And these things are all web based, accessible. Many of them do cost money, et cetera. But like increasingly, like they're just things you have access to if you have a cell phone and an internet connection or whatever. And it's really cool to think of a world where like, I mean, similar to like you and I are the same generation, like when cell phones became as good as they are, you imagine like being a kid now and being able to go like with the same mindset we had, like run out, make movies with our phones, like, and they're high quality.
Yeah, they're 4K
Yeah.
editor built in.
They're like broadcast ready. And like, does that mean that it's like all of a sudden everybody's a filmmaker because phones have that capability, like that quality? No, it just means there's a lot of content and a lot of noise. And I think with AI it's like it's opening up a lot of opportunities for people that didn't otherwise have them. it is dangerous, it is new, it is scary, but it's like the thing I tell my team, and like we talk about it quite a bit, is like you gotta, it's not going anywhere. It's like it's here, it's been here. Like AI has powered so much of our daily life for decades. It's just more sophisticated now. You can see it. Before it
Hmm.
was like under the hood, and now it's the car. And yeah, I think like just embracing it and accepting that like everybody's roles are going to have to change a little bit. I would guess in 10 years, um, we'll be talking about it in a very different way. Kind of like we talk about Photoshop, which is like, it's not the same. Like people give me a hard time for this comparison, but like when Photoshop was launched in like 91, it was met with so much like skepticism and disdain, and its quality sucked. And now it's like nobody blinks an eye at using Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. It's like it's a palette, it's a paintbrush. It's just what you use. Um, so yeah, not to like diminish anybody's fear or opinion on it. And like some people are just like hard and fast, like no AI, and that's cool. But like I prefer to be part of the conversation, And so for me, it's like I think it's important to be like, yes, AI. However, like, don't do it that way. Or what if you did it this way? Like, like I think more of that
Hmm.
yes and mindset applies.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been same thing with cell phones, right? We have a computer in your pocket? No way, right? And just like things like that, people are gonna have too much access. Libraries are gonna be killed. We still have tons of libraries in our neighborhood, right? Like that's what everybody thought with like smartphones, right? So I'm with you, right? It's more about embracing it and leveraging for the good things and making sure checks and balances are in place for those bad things.
Yeah. Your the library mention made me think of something else. Is a really cool thought. Like just think about like the resurgence of physical media and music, like vinyl. Remember when like Napster
Some
and
some
um
right there.
sorry, what?
There's some of my records right there.
Oh, records. I thought you said there's someone right there, and I was like, oh God, who's in here? Um, yeah, like I have so many records. My wife is so annoyed by that. Um, just the physical media is like so um popular again. And like I think when back in the days of Napster and LimeWire coming online, it was like, oh shit, everything's gonna be digital now, iTunes, Spotify, and it was, and it still is. But like things come around. Like I think there's like a newfound appreciation for like quality and craft. Um, in those mediums, and it makes it different. It doesn't mean it erases it. It just makes it different.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing I'm talking about, right? Is that that piece of the human piece that you just can't always put your finger on, but like the emotion behind it. Like that's why listening to something live is going to be 1,000 times better than any recording you listen to because you're there, you're feeling it, you're experiencing it. It's a human experience as opposed to just like listening to a recording.
Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah. All right. We're going long, but I mean, we can probably talk for a few more days. But I also want to get into um, just some advice that you have and some challenges you face. So let's start with that. So if you were knowing what you know now, and there's folks that are listening that are in the creative field or looking to get started in the creative field, what piece of advice would you give them, or maybe pieces of advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, I think the creative field still feels very hierarchical. It depends on, I mean, it's too sweeping of a generalization, but I think a lot of it, entertainment in particular, so I'll stick with that. It does feel very hierarchical, and a lot of people, for good reason, don't know how to get into it, and it is hard to like navigate. And I think something I've seen though that's really cool in people that reach out to me on LinkedIn, or people that I have a chance to mentor or that get introduced or whatever, is that this generation is way more comfortable just like cold reaching out, and they also have way more access. Um, like when I moved to LA and started working, I didn't have a LinkedIn, didn't even exist, and like I couldn't just reach out to people that were working at big companies. You kind of just had to like hope you met the right person and hope for the next job and look for gigs on Craigslist and all that. Um, and so like the point is that I think like continuing to do that is awesome because like I love the um audaciousness of just like, oh, this person's at Netflix. I'm gonna send them a message and be like, hey, I just got out of college. Like, do you have any advice? And I always, when I get those messages, I'm always like, yes, I do. And I think it's so cool that you reached out, and I'd love to talk to you. Do I do that with every one of them? No, I don't. I don't often have time, but I guess the point is like just be like exerting that curiosity and like just being humble and asking for help is so I view that as a strength, like that ability to say like I need help. I think I have something to say. I think I have something to offer. Um, what do you suggest I do? And I think that that is super cool that people can do that, and I would encourage a lot of people to do it. I think I see that's not second nature for a lot of people. A lot of people are afraid to ask those questions, or maybe just not comfortable. And so yeah, a long way of sort of saying like just continuing to be curious and like asking for help, reaching out, network in your own way too. Like networking is so hard. I'm a very much an introvert. I very much don't like networking in the traditional sense of like going to big events and like bustling around and trying to make conversation. Like I'm just it's not my wheelhouse. But there's ways to do it now that are that again like just like AI. There's just so many different avenues for connection. So I do that, and then yeah, like be super curious. Like use AI. Like be thoughtful. Challenge its application. Like um don't just embrace it but like question it and like find a role for yourself sort of in that evolving sphere because then you're useful like just be useful. You know what I mean? Like one other thing I'll share quickly. I know we're kind of just running on, but um my the first guy that I had an opportunity to ask about like working in film was a commercial director, and he thanks to him he put me in touch with somebody that gave me a production assistant job years ago. But his advice to me was like, if somebody tells you to pick up the film at 3 a.m. from Technicolor, do it. Like don't ask questions, just be useful. And there's some that's a little problematic, I'll admit. Like 3 a.m. it's like as long as you're well rested and you're treated well and all that stuff, like, we can get into that. But at the end of the day, it's just like if there's a mess on the floor, grab a broom. Like be useful. It doesn't nothing's beneath you, like you should do that. And I'm saying that to myself too. Like if there's something that's way outside of my range, but I know I can do it to help. It's like you just do it. If you work in a restaurant and there's food on the expo line, you take it to the table. You don't wait for the expo person to yell at them. You know what I mean? Like just be useful.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I remember a lot about you. You used to use that quote a lot. It'd be useful. Um, and it's one of those things that if you're not asking for your help throughout your entire life, I think there's something not right, right? Because I think at every point of our life, like I know for sure, I've asked for help and I've needed help at every single point of my life, right? No one ever has it all together,
Yeah.
and I was that person, like you said. If there's trash in the hallway, to just pick it up. I would pick it up. Like, what? Why am I above picking up that piece of trash and throwing it in the garbage can that it's right next to?
Yep.
No, because, like, I don't want trash. I wouldn't do it at my house, so why do it there?
Yeah.
And that's a great it's a simple way, succinct way. Be curious, ask for help, and be useful, right? That's pretty much the succinct way, and I think if
Yeah.
you did those 3 things through your whole life, I think you'd be pretty good.
Totally. Yeah. I mean that is it. Be curious, ask for help, be useful. Um, pick up that trash. It's not
Yeah.
beneath you, and I don't know, man. It's just good energy, I think. Um, another, to the point of attribution, that's another my wife special. She's like she's so thoughtful and we talk about this stuff all the time, but it's like, yeah, just like have this energy, like have this good energy, be helpful. Um, the world is bigger than you. And like that's what it boils down to.
Nice. She's wise.
Yeah.
Definitely wise. You came up, sir. Um, so in closing, I just wanna kinda talk about what you're up to now. I know
Yeah.
you're at Netflix, Creative Labs, but are you doing anything else,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there in the world, things like that?
Yeah. I have been spending a lot more time. talking to people, I think like I have been so fortunate to be at this company for such a long time and doing a lot of work here that's really cool. And so when people reach out, like I mentioned, like I'm just trying to talk to new people that are like getting their footing in the industry or trying to figure out creativity for themselves. Um, I've been consulting some small production companies and startups and brands on basically ideas and sort of how you position yourselves in a global marketplace and the importance of simplicity and clarity and in branding. And that's really fun for me because it's like you do all this stuff in the vacuum of like your job, and then when you help apply that thinking to the world, it's like, oh wow, this is like it's like the blast radius of that advice is like just way different, and so it's really satisfying to see how that helps people. Creatively, like I haven't, I used to, back to the point of like making films and creating and making, I used to do a bit of that, and I haven't in some years. So I've been like getting back into the sort of just like writing, like getting my thoughts out and doing that, and talking with like other creators, and just kind of embracing creativity, big and small, like especially small. Like if you have 5 minutes to do something creative, it's like so nice. And reading, like back to the point of library that you brought up, like it's been so nice to read books. I don't know why, but like to hold a book physically and be like, oh man, what a powerful device for like sharing ideas. So yeah, that's how I've been filling my cup lately. It's been cool.
That's fantastic. What Since you've been reading books, what book would you recommend if there is one or two
Yeah,
for folks that are listening?
I don't read a lot of like businessy books. Not that that's what you're asking. But I mostly read a lot of fiction. You know me, like I like dark stuff, like sci-fi and horror. So I've been reading a lot of that. But I did read a book called The Body recently, which is not it's nonfiction. It's by an author named Bill Bryson. Um, and is so good. And it's about our bodies, and it's just sort of about the systems that are like always just ticking away um, under the hood, to use that phrase again. It's so fascinating, and I found it so applicable to my work and my life because it's just like gives you such an immense appreciation for like how much is going on to even just make this happen. Like this interaction right now that you and I are having is like so many insane systems that are having to work well in order for us to sit down and have a conversation and record it, like anyway, highly recommend The Body, Bill Bryson, audiobook or read it with your eyeballs. It's super good. Yeah, I could go on and on, but reading has been nice.
Nice. Yeah, it's really just an open question to whichever book because this is for creatives also. So
All right, another three that I just finished that are awesome um, is the Silo trilogy. So like the first book's called Wool, second is Shift, the third is Dust by Hugh Howey. And Apple TV Plus turned it into a series, which is called Silo. The books are so good, so
mm,
good, and it's like solid sci-fi. I haven't watched the show yet. I shouldn't or wouldn't endorse an Apple show publicly, but I'm sure it's great. Just kidding, it's probably great. Um, I'm excited to watch it. So like, check out those books; they're so good.
nice. And if you send links, I can drop them in
Oh,
the show
sweet.
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
And then the last, I know you mentioned you're super busy, so you can answer it or not. But if folks did want to get a hold of you, are you open to help folks out? What do you look for? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to ignore LinkedIn messages. Just kidding. No, like LinkedIn is actually good. It's noisy because there's a lot of it's first off, it's not a habit I check. But LinkedIn messaging is good, and like I also like I'm totally cool with cold email. So like I'll link, you can link my email and people can reach out because again, like I think more often than not, the people that reach out are like being very um I'm very impressed that they're just like, hey, like help me out. I want to know how to do this thing. And it always leads to something for me that's like time well spent, and I learn something, from them just as much as they might want to learn something from me. So yeah, email. Let's do that old fashioned email thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll put your phone number in the. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. But dude, it was so great chatting with you. And not I'm taking from Reed Hastings is always leave them wanting more. So I know you and I could talk for another hour or two if we really wanted to,
Yeah,
but we'll leave people wanting more, and they can reach out to us if they want to learn more. So
wise
thanks.
words from the other Reed.
Yeah. You're not that anymore.
I'm
He's
just
not
the
there.
Reed.
You're just
Yeah,
Reed now. Yeah.
yeah.
So no more the other Reed.
No, just Reed.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Thanks, Reed, for taking the time out of your schedule. I know it well. LinkedIn can be a hectic place, but we appreciate you for sure.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It was awesome to hang out with you for a little bit.
Thanks for listening to Creative Leadership with Heart. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It'll help make sure that you get notified every time there's new episodes that are coming out. And if you want to connect with me, check me out at riconasol.com. All right, all. Have a good one.